Can you introduce yourself first?
I'm Machoka Geoffrey. What about you?
I'm Millicent Isawoke.
Thank you.
Tell us what you are going to talk about in 1 minute.
I'm going to talk about gender-based violence. Gender-based violence in many communities have become more rampant, and now I'm going to discuss about what is gender-based violence and people to understand in broad.
Why are you concerned about the topic GBV?
Because many families, in the families we need to stop this gender-based violence in our families or in our society. Many, as an effect of GBV, many girls end up dropping out of school. Many people, it results to death, and that is why we have come up in a very broad category to ensure that we are going to stop gender-based violence in our community.
What's now gender-based violence?
Gender-based violence is basically any type of violence directed at a person based on the gender identity. It's basically any type of violence directed at a person based on their gender identity. It is mostly perpetrated by men or women and girls. However, we need to understand that GBV is also perpetrated against men by women. Thank you.
Briefly, can you tell us the forms or types of gender-based violence?
We have 5 types of gender-based violence. Number 1, we have physical violence. Number 2, we have sexual violence. Number 3, we have psychological violence. Number 4, we have economic violence. And lastly, we have harmful traditional practices.
In 1 minute, can you tell us or explain in brief what physical violence means and explain?
Physical violence is any intentional act causing injury on another person by way of bodily act. Is any intentional act causing injury on another person by way of bodily act. In other words, causing bodily harm. We have some examples which can to show that physical violence do happen. So, for example, when this physical violence is caused by maybe slapping someone. When you slap someone, that is a form of physical violence. Number 2, beating. When you when you use stick to beat up another person, that is a form of physical violence. Number 3, we have kicking, using a kick to kick that person. That is a form of physical violence. And lastly, we have boxing. When you box another person.
Let's talk about sexual violence. Can you explain what is sexual violence and instances or examples of sexual violence?
Very good. Sexual violence is forcing, intimidating someone to engage in any sexual act against his or her will or without his or her understanding because of his or her age, disability, or the influence of alcohol and drugs. Is forcing, intimidating someone to engage in any sexual act against his or her will or without his or her understanding because of his or her age, disability, or the influence of alcohol and drugs. We have 4 examples of sexual violence. Number 1, we have defilement. Number 2, we have sexual harassment. Number 3, we have rape. Thank you.
Talk of psychological or emotional violence, and at some extent give us 2 examples of psychological violence.
Psychological or emotional violence, this occurs when a person subject or expose another person to behavior that may result in stress, anxiety, or depression. That, as for example, in Kenya, there are occasions whereby many people do experience mental health. Is when we subject a person or exposes another person to behavior that may result to stress, anxiety, or depression. That is what we call psychological violence. We have 2 examples to show that psychological or emotional violence is happening. Number 1, when you are controlling what someone can or cannot cannot do. That is an example of psychological emotion. Number 2, constantly insulting or calling someone names. That is an example of emotional or psychological violence. Endelea.
The audience want to understand what economic violence means and their examples as well.
When you talk about economic violence, these are instances when a person is being denied access to his or her finance, economic activities, or other basic needs by controlling his or her financial means. When I deny someone access to his or her financial finances or economic activities or other basic needs by controlling his or her financial means, that is what we call economic violence. And examples of this economic violence, we have number 1, husband taking wife's money or salary.
The audience want to understand what economic violence means and their examples as well.
Very good. Economic violence is an instances when a person is being denied an access to his or her finances, economic activities, or other basic needs by controlling his or her financial means. When I try to deny you access to your finances or in any economic activities or other needs by controlling your financial means, that is a form of what? Economic violence. An example of this economic violence, number 1, husband taking wife's salary or money. Number 2, when you deny someone the opportunity to work and gain income using in a nanny parastatal. That is to elaborate that when a person have qualification to work for any government or an institution and you are trying to deny someone the opportunity to work and gain income, that is a form of what? Economic violence. Thank you.
Talk of the last type of GBV, that is harmful traditional practices and their examples.
Harmful traditional practices, these are practices that have negative effects on the well-being of people, but are rooted in their cultures and traditions and are passed from generations to generations. These are practices that have negative effects on the well-being of people, but are rooted in their cultures and traditions and are passed from generation to generations. Examples of these harmful traditional practices, number 1, we have female genital mutilation. Number 2, we have child marriage. Number 3, we have traditional mark. The mark being made on the people, that is what we call what? Traditional mark. Now,
let's take 5 minutes to explain the audience what are the effects of GBV.
We have 6 effects of gender-based violence. One of the effects of gender-based violence, number 1, it results to unwanted pregnancy. Why do we need that it results to unwanted pregnancy? When you force a person to have sexual intercourse with you, it results to pregnancy that a person does not want to keep. That is one of the effects of GBV. It results to unwanted pregnancy. Number 2, it leads to sexual transmitted infections. How? You do not know the person who raped you. You do not know the status of that person who raped you or forced you to have sex with. This may result to sexual transmitted infections. Number 3, we have family disputes. How does family disputes come about as an effect of GBV? Instances where the spouse have issues within their homes. This results to domestic violence. This could be breaking of it could lead to breaking of families. One of the family members has to move away and leave the one behind. This as a form of effects of gender-based violence, it leads to family disputes. Number 4, we have dropping out of schools. How? For example, a child is pregnant or where a child is forced to get married. This results to a child dropping out of school, and it's just simple as that. Number 5, we have injuries. We all know physical violence when perpetrated against a person, it leads to injuries. It's an automatic thing. When you try to explain about injuries, physical violence when perpetrated against a person, it results to injuries. And the last one, we have death. Instances a child has gone through female genital mutilation, the person ends up dying because the person had either had an excessive bleeding during female genital mutilations. Yes, thank you.
When you talk about unwanted pregnancies as well as an effect of GBV, can you explain so that an audience can understand what you mean?
When we talk about it results to unwanted pregnancy, I've said earlier that when you force a person to have sexual intercourse with you, you are forced to have sexual intercourse. It results to pregnancy, and that pregnancy, that person is not willing to keep it, to upkeep it. That results as an effect of GBV.
Can you elaborate on STI as an effect of GBV?
When we talk about sexual transmitted infections, these are infections that are transmitted from one person to another. In instances as an effect of GBV, when a person, when you don't know that person, for example, who raped you or who forced you to have sex with, that person may have sexual transmitted infection, and it could easily transfer when you are being forced, when you are not aware, when you don't have any understanding of the person who raped you, or the status of the person who raped you. Then,
please, can you give instance when there is a family dispute?
I said earlier that family instances when a spouse have issues within the family, this results to domestic violence, or it could result to breaking up of families. Just as, for example, one of the family members have to move away and leave the one behind. That, as a result of family disputes, is that becomes as an effect of gender-based violence. When a domestic violence erupt from our homes, one of the spouse has to move away and leave the one behind. And then
many students drop out of school. Can you explain that as an effect of GBV?
Very good. Dropping out of school. I said earlier, for example, a child is pregnant, or whether a girl is being forced to get married. This results to a person will not stay in school. He will be forced to get married, or maybe when a person is pregnant, he will be forced to drop out of the school, and that is automatic. Thank you.
Death as a form of the effect of GBV. Can you explain how that comes about?
Very good. We have said that instances a child has gone through, for example, female genital mutilation, that person ends up dying because maybe during the process of female genital mutilation, that person experienced excessive bleeding. That excessive bleeding leads to the death of what? Of the child. And I'm insisting on this. We need to stop this female genital mutilation in our community, and we need to stop also gender-based violence. This will result to death, dropping out of schools, breakup of families, unwanted pregnancy, and many more. Please.
After all those activities of GBV, just for example, has happened to you, where do you seek help? Kindly give us a link or a place to report the matter.
Very good. Suppose any action, or you have been raped, you have been, any form of GBV has happened to you, where do you seek help? Number one, you need to run for a Department of Social Welfare, whereby you can either ask for assistance immediately. Number two, we have Women's Bureau. Women's Bureau is an organization that is meant to assist any kind of incident that has happened to any person. Number 3, we have National Human Rights Commission. National Human Rights Commission, suppose you report there, they will take action immediately, because that is something which has been imekataliwa kabisa. Number 4, we have the nearest police station. Immediately any kind of that activities happen to you, you need to report to the nearest polling station so that you get assisted very fast. Number 5, you need to report to a trusted parent, your parent or trusted person. That person will be able to take action immediately and you'll get assisted. Last but not least, we have non-government organization and community-based organization working on women and child rights. Thank you very much.
Can you conclude or give us a conclusion?
To conclude on this, gender-based violence is unacceptable, unjustifiable, and must stop. It is never your fault, so you do not have to condone it. Speak up, speak out, and together we can end gender-based violence. Thank you for your concentration, and thank you very much, and may God bless you. Bye-bye.